in the whiteout game that we're going to have here in Cincinnati. It's going to be another member of that 2020 draft class, and both of these guys are going to be asked by their teams for big performances in this game. Obviously, the Dolphins looking to carry that momentum, and the Bengals looking to build momentum of their own, trying to get a second straight win after that 0-2 start. An interesting note about this game, like we mentioned, it is a rematch of that 2019 game. And when I asked Burrow about that performance, he said that the game that he had then, when he threw for over 300 yards, had 3 touchdowns, posted an absurd 97.3 total QBR, that validated what he thought and how he was going to be that season. And we all know how it turned out with him being the #1 overall pick and now leading Cincinnati to a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I was there for that game, and we were all like, okay, wow, everyone talking about Tua coming into that season. It ended up being that Joe Burrow was more of the story. Thanks to Ben for that. And speaking of Tua Tagovailoa, let's talk about some of the news around the NFL right now as we read and react. Tua briefly left Sunday's game with what appeared to be a head injury, but head coach Mike McDaniel has since clarified it was a back injury. Let's hear what was said about that by Tua today.
Yeah, I would say everything. Having to twist to hand the ball off, having to toss the ball, having to throw the ball, every aspect of it. I haven't tried today yet, but before we go out there and do our walkthrough, we'll get some throws in and see how it feels.
He actually called me at like 10:50 last night. I'm like, dude, is everything okay? No, I'm just checking in on you. I'm like, all right, that's fun. And so, and just him talking to me, I can tell in his voice, he's literally going to do everything he can.
I love the relationship between Mike McDaniel and Tua.
Everything okay?
Everything okay? RC, how important, though, was it for Tua's teammates to see him really gut out a win on that game?
I thought it was extremely important. There are these different steps to leadership, and one of them is playing well, and we've seen him do that, especially the first 2 weeks of the season in the fourth quarter against the Ravens. But it's toughness, right? It's showing that you're just one of the guys. Every football player in the world, when he gets dinged up or he's banged up, is trying to convince the doctors and the staff to let him back out on the field. Tua not only got back out on the field, but he produced in what was the biggest game of the season for the Miami Dolphins. That's another step to earning that C that's on his chest and also becoming the franchise quarterback of the Miami Dolphins.
Glad to see that it was just a back injury. I hate saying it that
Jalen
way.
Ramsey's back was hurt too when he was in Jacksonville before he came out. And there was also a security guard at the seaport that told me he hurt his back and it was also hard to walk.
Facts from RC. Up next, Jameis Winston and the Saints, who have put up just 24 total points in their last 2 games combined. They're both losses. Look at this. The Saints have scored a total of 13 points during the first 3 quarters of the games this season. That's the fewest in the NFL, if you're wondering. Big reason for that has been the struggles of Winston, who's averaged fewer than 5 yards passing per passing attempt during the first 3 quarters. That's worse in the NFL. So with the team trailing in the fourth quarter, Winston's taken more risks, resulting in a league-high 5 interceptions in the fourth quarter. Dan, that's kind of what we didn't want to see out of Jameis. What are you seeing issue-wise from the Saints offense?
Number one, they miss Sean Payton. That's leading to their slow starts because poor game planning with their first 15, how to attack the defense. Number two, conversion ruining penalties. 2nd and 8 happens. They get a first down, but here comes that penalty. Now we're in 2nd and 18. Drive is done. The third thing, zero plan for zero pressure happening way too much. Against Carolina last week, who's a zero pressure team, you got 7 guys coming in pressure, only 6 in protection. You have to know somebody's coming free. Does it look like the quarterback thinks that? No. The receivers aren't even looking for the football. It's 3rd and 8 and no one is ready. There's no plan for if they bring zero. This is how we get the ball out of our hands to make sure we have a chance for conversion. This happened way too much on their tape this past week, playing against the team who brings zero in zero blitz situations. They got to game plan better early on. They got to figure out how to stop ruining drives with penalties that hurt first downs. And they got to have better plans for pressure.
Yeah, I mean, listen, with all those weapons on that offense, I thought we would see them off to a much hotter start. We'll see if they can get it figured out. Let's get to Russell Wilson and the Broncos, who struggled offensively in their 11-10 win over the 49ers on Sunday. And Marcus, last night, Russ, as well as our Dan Orlovsky, were both collateral damage during the Manning cast. Watch this.
It helps to get a safety. It helps when Jimmy Garoppolo imitated Dan Orlovsky and step out of the end zone. That helps. That's how you that's how you get 11, eh?
They should have paid that punter $235 million instead of Russell.
Ooh, goodness. Okay, listen, funny jokes, obviously. But what do you make, Marcus, of Russ's play 3 weeks into his time in Denver?
Yeah, I think it's a correlation between the head coach being new to this and also Russell Wilson understanding that he needs to turn the clock back a little bit and become more of a dual threat guy than just trying to stand back there and deliver the ball. And he did that late in this football game, and that was the reason they were able to drive and make some plays. Listen, sometimes as a veteran in this league, I've challenged Rush. Go to your coach and tell him what needs to happen when you're on the field. But also, when you're in the games, players over plays. And Russ turned to his legs in a lot of these situations, third down conversions, extending plays, and that was the reason Denver was able to go down and score a touchdown and take the lead in this game. He's going to have to do that. His coach is still figuring things out. Russ, you got to take over with your play.
Yeah, you wonder what those conversations are like, because I would have thought we would have already seen it happen.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens this week. All right,
trying to
coming
talk
up,
to Dan about
after a
food.
convincing win against the Chargers from last year to now.
Shout out to my brother talking about this last year about Jalen not throwing with anticipation and always wanting to see guys open before he got rid of the ball. He's become more aggressive, pushing the ball down the field. And that only happens when you go into the offseason and you intentional about that type of work. And that's something we lamented about with Jalen Hurts, is that he's going to work to become a better quarterback.
Part of it is, too, like, I'm going to trust you with the ball.
Exactly,
right?
exactly. So, Devontae, that was double coverage, y'all. Usually you're like, hey, yo, like, find somebody else. He feels comfortable about his guys. Getting A.J. Brown instilled a lot of confidence in him as well. But Jalen Hurts no longer needs to be absolutely sure that the play is going to be made. He's trusting his guys now.
Hey, guys, you heard what Darius Slay Jr. said. We got Batmans out there. I mean, they got Michael Keaton. They got Christian Bale. They don't have Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck was terrible.
He was hard.
They got the new guy, though, from Twilight. They got all the Batmans.
Rob,
and when you look at
what's
this
his
team,
name?
who are you going to
Rob
stop?
Pattinson.
You have
Of course you would
Watkins,
know.
right, who's a deep ball guy. A.J. Brown, the big body, 50-50 ball catcher, run after catch. Devontae Smith, the catch radius, the hops, the hands, all those things. Then Dallas Goedert in the middle working the seam. And also a plethora of backs that can run it, and a quarterback, and an offensive line that's absolutely phenomenal.
No doubt.
Planning for this team is a nightmare because they can just pick matchups. It's like a 5-on-5 basketball game. KD, you got it, go ahead. Kyrie, you got it, go ahead. And you got to pick your poison, and that poison is deadly.
That's why they remind me of the 2021 Rams on offense, where empty is their foundation. Right now in empty, he's 14 of 16 passing. Now, first of all, RC, like, I got the double slants up top. They're comboing the inside receiver. Jalen Hurts is like, all right, AJ, you just run the slant on the outside. As long as that outsider, that slot defender carries on the outside, right now, like, I love this ball placement. It's one-on-one, big body, back shoulder. Well, if you want to play us in straight up, man, Devontae Smith at the bottom of the screen on the side, here comes the shallow cross. But you got to have a teammate that could beat that route as well. Get in the way of the defender, one jab, don't make contact. That's a 5-yard throw that goes 30-plus yards. Now, if you're going to say, well, we're going to cover everybody, Jalen Hurts has the ability to go, well, if you guys want to do this, here comes quarterback draw with your wide defensive line. Now, Jason Kelsey's going to miss this block and a safety, but, y'all, he ain't going to miss that often now. And that's the dangerous. The way I put it is you got to be big enough, you got to be skilled enough, you got to be strong enough, you got to be fast enough to play them in empty. Big enough to cover AJ one-on-one. You got to be skilled enough to cover Devontae one-on-one. You got to be strong enough to cover Dallas one-on-one, and then you got to be fast enough to cover Quez Watkins one-on-one. Not a lot of defense in the league. That's not a lot of defense in the league that can do that.
Jalen Hurts. Yeah, well, because you were there. Jalen Hurts is the first player in NFL history, guys, to record at least 900 passing yards and 100 rushing yards through his team's first
Their
3
empty
games.
personnel
He
is
is
brutal.
the 11th ranked offense in the entire league by himself.
I'll be fascinated to see how defenses choose to try and play them moving forward.
Philadelphia Hurts is.
We got to give Sirianni some credit.
Yeah, we do.
Like,
Yeah,
he's
we
doing a
should.
good
Totally.
job, man.
I like how RC just like dunked on me with that other stat. That was great. Let's go to this week as Hurts and the Eagles will face Trevor Lawrence and a Jags offense that has been rolling the last 2 weeks. Lawrence has completed 77% of his passes over the last couple weeks, best in the NFL. He's thrown 5 touchdowns without an interception and ranks 2nd in QBR. RC, why the huge leap for Lawrence this year?
Chicago Bears, pay attention to this. When you have a very good, young, talented quarterback, you might want to put people around him.
No.
You look at what they did, right? You go from having Urban Meyer as a head coach to getting a true professional head coach in Doug Peterson, who we watched tutor Carson Wentz in his young career. You also add Christian Kirk, and it felt like maybe you overpaid for him, but this is a connection that's becoming one of the best in the slot in the entire league. And then there's Zay Jones on the outside, Marvin Jones on the outside, and then you look in the backfield, a two-headed monster in Robinson and Etienne. They built around this young man, and we knew he was ultimately talented, and he's always been elite from a skill set, but now we're getting to see him utilize that because of what they put around him.
I think the most important word you just said is utilize, right? This is what Doug Peterson did in Jacksonville. He identified where they were above average to really good, and he's leaning into that. Christian Kirk, to your point, in the slot, but the lines of scrimmage for the Jacksonville Jaguars is going to travel. Like, that is going to travel. And I was watching this offensive line fire off, and it reminded me of the Tennessee Titans. James Robinson, it reminded me of the Tennessee Titans that we talked about when Derrick Henry. It's dual double teams in the heart of the line of scrimmage. Guys, look, everybody at home, you got to understand, we are not, when you RC, you played, Dan, when you played, we were able to practice this. It was a drill called 9-on-7.
Worst drill in the world.
Worst drill in the world.
Where
we were able to practice this. Now, teams are not practicing taking on double teams week in and week out. So that physicality that they're bringing, and Doug Peterson adding, Trevor Lawrence moving around, Etienne, James Robinson.
Tell the people what 9-on-7 is.
9-on-7 is just 9 on defense, 7 guys on offense.
Strictly run game.
Strictly run game, and it's physical. It ain't nothing finesse about it.
Double
exactly.
teams. Dan, you heard RC mention the defense a little bit. How is this Jags defense making it difficult on opposing offenses every week?
Part of the support is getting a better roster football team around them. Two things stand out. Number one, they change the line of scrimmage often. So as a play caller, you're sitting there going, I want to run the football. Our dudes are getting whooped at the line of scrimmage. This is them changing. You want to try to do that as an offensive unit.
Right.
They're changing that line of scrimmage on a consistent basis. The second thing is disguise without expose. You know, oftentimes when you get in these defenses, that's how you hesitate as a quarterback right there for Justin Herbert. You get these defenses that are crazy exotic and chaotic. Well, they expose some part of their defense that you sit there and go, I can get you. You might get me once, but I'm going to get you back. They don't. They do a really good job of disguising without exposing a person or a scheme in their defense.
The Jaguars lead the NFL with a +7 turnover margin this season.
Hey,
that
y'all,
works
the Jags
well.
are good.
They're good.
They're good.
Jags
Okay,
are good.
up next, CeeDee Lamb's fourth quarter drive impressed everyone, even the best to ever wear.
You want to talk about a playmaker? That's a playmaker. He made the play. And then the one-handed stab for the grab of the touchdown on the go-ahead. It's what playmaker.